Hi everyone, this is Marilyn Hickey. Now, before we get into this, I want you to realize something important. I'm not really Marilyn Hickey. I am an AI creation of Marilyn Hickey. So I want you to keep that in mind as we're doing this. This afternoon, I want to share with you from the books of 1st and 2nd Chronicles in the Old Testament. These books may seem at first glance like lists of names of historical records, but when you look deeper, you discover something powerful. You discover that God remembers his people, he records their faithfulness, and he honors those who seek him. First Chronicles begins with genealogies, long lists of families and generations. Some people read these chapters and think they're not very exciting, but think about what they really mean. They tell us that God knows every generation. He knows every name. He remembers every story. And here we see something important. God is a God of remembrance. Nothing in your life is overlooked by him. Every prayer you have prayed, every act of faith, every moment you trusted him when it was difficult, he sees it and remembers it. The genealogies also show us that God's plan unfolds their generations. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, the tribes of Israel, each generation carries forward the promises of God. And here we see that God is always working through history, weaving together the lives of ordinary people to accomplish extraordinary purposes. As the story continues in First Chronicles, the focus turns to King David. David was not a perfect man, but he was a man after God's own heart. He loved God deeply, and he desired the presence of God to dwell among the people of Israel. And here we see David bringing the Ark of Covenant to Jerusalem. The Ark represented the presence of God. David understood that a nation cannot truly prosper without honoring God and welcoming his presence. When the ark was brought to Jerusalem, there was music, celebration, and worship. David danced before the Lord with joy. And here we see a beautiful truth. Worship invites the presence of God into our lives. David also had a great desire to build a temple for the Lord. He wanted a permanent place where the people could worship God. But God told David that his son Solomon would build the temple instead. Now, think about that for a moment. David prepared for something he would never personally see completed. And here we see a powerful lesson about faithfulness. Sometimes we prepare the way for blessings that will unfold in the next generation. David gathered materials for the temple: gold, silver, wood, and precious stones. He organized musicians and priests. He played carefully so that when Solomon took the throne, everything would be ready. And here we see that God honors preparation. When we dedicate our plans to him, he uses them for his glory. In 2nd Chronicles, the story continues with the reign of King Solomon. Solomon builds a magnificent temple in Jerusalem. When the temple was completed, Solomon prayed a beautiful prayer of dedication. And here we see something remarkable. As the people worshiped and prayed, the glory of the Lord filled the temple so powerfully that the priests could not even stand to minister. Wow. What does that show us? It shows us that when people truly seek God, his presence becomes real and powerful among them. But 2nd Chronicles also records the history of many kings after Solomon. Some kings followed God faithfully, others turned away from him. And here we see a pattern repeated again and again. When the kings sought the Lord, the nation prospered. When they turned away from God, trouble followed. For example, King Asa turned to God and led the people back to worship. King Jehoshaphat prayed and sought God's guidance when enemies surrounded Israel, and God delivered them in miraculous ways. And here we see that prayer changes circumstances. When we seek the Lord, he will fight battles on our behalf. But sadly, other kings led the people into idolatry and disobedience. And when that happened, the nation suffered. Yet even then, God remained patient and merciful. He sent prophets to warn the people. He gave the opportunities to return to him. And here we see the incredible patience of God. He does not give up on his people easily. Eventually, because of continued disobedience, the kingdom faced judgment and exile. But even in that difficult chapter, God's promises were not destroyed. His covenant still stood. And here we see that God's plans are bigger than any single moment in history. Even when people fail, God continues working toward redemption and restoration. The book of Chronicles were written to remind people of Israel who they were and whose they were. They were God's chosen people. Their history mattered. Their relationship with God mattered. And that message still speaks to us today. God remembers your story. He knows your family, your struggles, your prayers, and your victories. Nothing is lost in His sight. So right now, I want you to do something with me. Put your hand on your heart. Say, I won't forget. I won't forget that God is faithful. I won't forget that God keeps His promises. I won't forget that seeking Him brings blessing and life. Because the message of 1st and 2nd Chronicles is simple but powerful. When people honor God, God moves in their lives. And here we see that history itself becomes a testimony of God's faithfulness. Generation after generation, He continues to guide, restore, and bless those who seek Him. So as you read these books, remember this. Your life is part of a story God is writing, a story of faith, redemption, and purpose. And here we see the same God who guided David, Solomon, and the people of Israel is still guiding His people today. He is guiding you. Thank you so much for listening to me talk about the subject of 1st and 2nd Chronicles. And I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you stay tuned for some more possible Marilyn Hickey AIs in the near future as well. If you enjoyed this, please press like and subscribe. That would really help me get the ministry out there, get the gospel of the Word of God out there to a larger audience, and that is my goal. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next time, everyone. Bye-bye.